If I could have everyone's attention, I would like to call the May 15th meeting of the Forsyth County Board of Education to order. First, we'll have an invocation and pledge with Ms. Roach.
Please stand. Let us pray. With Memorial Day in mind, we give thanks to you for the great land of our birth with all its liberties and many freedoms and blessings. Today we especially give thanks for those who served their country in its hour of need and for fallen comrades who have given their very lives in that service. May we never forget their sacrifice. Please watch over those military men and women who, knowing the real and potential dangers of their work, stand ready to preserve the cause of freedom with their devotion to duty. Grant your continued divine care over the family members who are called upon daily to watch and wave goodbye to their loved ones as they go to do their duty as members of our nation's armed forces. Also bless those who may be personally suffering in any way today. In respect to all faiths and religions, amen. Please salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have before us an agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
A motion by Ann and a second by Nancy. All in favor? Unanimous. And first, we have recognitions with Fonda Harrison, I believe.
Good evening. This is the favorite part of the evening for most of us because we get to recognize students and staff members from Forsyth County Schools for their outstanding achievements. And you'll have to bear with us tonight with it being the last meeting of the year that we do recognitions. We have quite a few on our agenda. So if we can hold our applause until the end, please. First of all, we will recognize a student who won an Istanbul art essay contest. This is Eric Hong from Riverwatch Middle School. So Eric, if you will come up to the front, walk around the back and come down this way.
It's Erica, and she hasn't shown up yet.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hopefully she'll get here before we get finished. I need to make myself a note, and so I don't call her Eric. Erica. Okay. Okay, next we have the 2014 Earth Day Illustrated Poem Contest winners. These are two students from Johns Creek Elementary, and our kindergarten to second grade winner is Jocelyn Wang, a second grade student at Johns Creek Elementary. Jocelyn is not here?
She's out of country at the moment.
Okay.
The principal and I would be happy to.
All right, come on up. And we also have from Johns Creek, fifth grade student Brian Chong. Is Brian here?
Oh, yeah.
Come on up. Congratulations. Now if you'll just walk right down through here and shake everybody's hand. And for all of those that are here to support Brian, if you'll stand, please, and let us recognize you, family members or friends and teachers, staff members. Thank you very much. Now we have the River of the Woods. I believe this was maybe a poetry contest. Was it poetry? Poetry, okay. This student is from Riverwatch Middle School, Jin Na from Riverwatch Middle School. Can you come up, please? Congratulations. And if family and staff members that are here to support Jen, if you'll stand up, please. Thank you very much. Now we have our ProStart National Culinary Competition students from South Forsyth High School. These students participated, I believe it was in Minnesota, I read, at the national competition. They were required to produce a gourmet appetizer, entree, and dessert. And each of these students received over $50,000 in scholarships each. So that is outstanding for these culinary students. They represent the South Forsyth High School Culinary Arts Program, and these students are Corey Nolan, if you'll come to the front, please. Congratulations. Jamie Brazier. Olivia Fise. Congratulations. Jason Ham.
All that hard work, my goodness.
And Mackenzie Petrin. We also want to recognize their teachers, Dawn Martin and Suzanne Smack. Congratulations.
Good job.
Teachers have to walk across too. Great job, thank you. Good job, Dawn. Good job. And if all those family members and school staff members that are here to support the South Forsyth Culinary Arts Program, if you'll please stand. Thank you very much. Now we have the VEX Robotics Competition World Championships. We want to recognize, again, South Forsyth High School students for their third place finish. They were, in this competition, required to apply mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer programming, and gaming strategies in this competition. So congratulations to them. They are Brian John, congratulations, Blake Lafayette, and Quentin Christ. And also the robotics coaches, Jim Chamberlain, and our own Teacher of the Year in Forsyth County, Mr. Nick Crowder. Great job. Now, for all the family and staff members here to support our, the VEX Robotics team, if you'll please stand. Thank you very much. All right, I think this is South Forsyth High night here. We have our 6A State Literary Championships, again from South Forsyth High School. The state champion for 3 years in a row for the girls solo is Anu Ramesh. The state champion boys solo, Shane Olcott. Congratulations. The state champion girls trio, Emily Herring, Kaylee Banks, and Claire Pappas. And the state champion boys quartet, Evan Kalatayud, sorry about that, Stephen Fedrowski, Barrett Crowder, and Shane Olcott. And the state runner-up for girls extemporaneous speaking, Juliana Lima. Congratulations. And their teacher, Mr. Kirk Grizzle. And if all those family members and school staff members here to support these literary champions, thank you very much. Now we want to recognize two schools for the Georgia Family Friendly School Awards from the Georgia State Department. We actually had 2 of 4 schools across the state that were chosen for this award. And to be considered a Georgia Family Friendly School, you have to be a Title I school. And they were selected because they represent the best in customer service for our students and our families in the school setting. State Superintendent John Barge said, "These schools understand the importance of welcoming environments that bring student success." Congratulations to Cumming Elementary. And Ms. Pam Podolsky as principal. And Ms. Midway Elementary, Mr. Todd Smith. Oh, she's not here. Okay. Did Erica get here? Okay, very good. Erica Hong, and she won the Istanbul Art and Essay Contest. She actually wins a free 10-day trip to Turkey for her, along with her teacher. And the family and staff members from Riverwatch are here. Please stand up. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to turn this over to Principal Terry North from Piney Grove for our Superior Spotlight.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to come tonight and tell you a little bit about our Grizzly Great Day of Giving 2014. In other words, we're back. This was our 4th annual G3 Day, and it was a delightful day, and I want to tell you a little bit about it first, as we call it G3 Day by the numbers. So, on May the 2nd, 2014, 1,198 Piney Grove students, 101 Piney Grove staff members, 194 Piney Grove parent and community business volunteers, for a total of 1,493 volunteers traveled in 33 school buses for 678 miles to serve at 58 charitable and nonprofit organizations and schools in Forsyth County and the surrounding areas. And they spent 2.5 to 3 hours fully engaged in community service as they gave of their time, their talents, their energy, their enthusiasm, and their hearts during our 4th annual Grizzly Great Day of Giving. So what exactly did our Grizzlies accomplish on this G3 Day? Well, let me give you a little smattering of that. They walked 6 miles in 3 different roadside locations and collected 30 bags of trash. They spread 100 bales of pine straw at one of our county's recreational parks. They separated and bagged 1,000 pounds of rice into quart-sized bags for a local food pantry, thus providing enough rice to feed 200 families for 4 months. And afterwards, over 500 tea bags, 200 packets of oatmeal, and 200 cans of food were all packed for distribution to needy families. They collected 8 bags of gently used clothing in an impromptu clothing drive for foster children and made 85 birthday bags with all the supplies for birthday parties for foster children. They sorted 50 mattresses from twin size to king size and matched up the headboards and the footboards to fit the 50 mattresses to create some bed sets. They sorted, color-coded, and hung on racks 200 clothing items. They unpacked and stored 5,200 pounds of food. They assembled 240 boxes and then packed the boxes with food for needy families throughout the North Georgia area. They also packed and made ready for shipping 5,520 homemade cookies, along with candy and 2 magazines per box in 46 boxes for servicemen and women serving abroad. They unloaded, sorted, and shelved 11 grocery carts of donated food, 630 items total, for a local church's food pantry, along with packing 48 sacks of groceries for community members to receive. 22 big yellow buses were washed to a shine.
Good.
They planted 16 flowers, weeded approximately 1,000 weeds, checked in and sorted and shelved 400 library books, and read to and quizzed with math flashcards 20 young students, all at one of our elementary schools. One of my favorite. They played board games, some for the first time, some of our students for the first time playing board games. They colored and chatted about life with 27 senior citizens, and then 18 young Grizzlies sang happy birthday to Bob, who was turning 87 that day. They made 63 blankets of love to give to young kids and infants who come to a local hospital's emergency room under adverse conditions, hoping to give them something to hold on to and help comfort them in their time of distress and need. 5,473 pounds of food were collected, counted, sorted, and bagged, and made ready to donate to food pantries throughout Forsyth County during our G3 Day food drive. They produced 52 dog play toys from strips of old T-shirts to be sold for $3 each, with the proceeds going to care for animals and shelters throughout our county. They rolled and tied over 1,000 silverware sets for a local organization that serves a sit-down hot meal once a week to hungry community members. And with the help of South Forsyth High School's culinary arts students and their teacher, Ms. Dawn Martin, they baked over 1,500 chocolate chip cookies to pack and make ready to ship to servicemen and women abroad. They stuffed 300 6-inch backpacks full of school supplies for back to school for needy students next fall. They created 250 greeting cards, bookmarks, and paper flowers to put on hospital patients' breakfast and lunch trays, especially patients who are long-term or have no visitors. And they painted thousands of brush strokes and pulled hundreds of weeds to beautify a courtyard at one of our neighboring schools. They spread 20 bales of pine straw, and they sorted and cut 2,557 bookmarks, put together 1,025 newcomers packets, and made 6 posters at one of our community's libraries. And then finally, they donated $1,000 to each of 3 different local nonprofit organizations that were voted on by our Piney Grove student body. And the recipients were Homestretch, Emory at Johns Creek, and Sawney Preserve. This money was raised through G3 Spirit Nights at local restaurants throughout the year and from donations from school clubs and organizations. Thus, over the past 4 years, the Piney Grove students, staff, and parents have donated $12,300 to local charitable and nonprofit organizations. As a principal of the school, I'm extremely proud of these students, and not just for what they accomplished in this short period of time that day, but mostly for their wonderful attitudes, their giving spirits, and definitely their incredibly kind hearts. And we all agree that it was a great day to be a Grizzly on May the 2nd. A little bit about the ripple effect of our Grizzly Great Day of Giving over these past 4 years. We started a new club at Piney Grove this year. One of our teachers took this on, initiated it. It's called the Grizzly Volunteers. And so the good work that we do on this one day can continue throughout the year. Also, several individual classes, clubs, athletic teams, and other groups, they've gone back to some of these same organizations and given of their time throughout the year. And then finally, G3 Day is going international. One of our parents who helped at our first G3 Day, who has been living abroad in Augsburg, Germany for the past 2 years, has initiated this idea and helped organize this day, or this kind of day, at her child's international school of 320 students that range from pre-K to 12th grade. And that's going to happen on May 27th. And they're calling it Make a Difference Day. One of the things that I'm reminded about as we go through and have this great day of giving is our Forsyth County Learner Profile outlines the attributes and characteristics and skills of students attending and graduating from Forsyth County schools. And when you look at our great day of giving, it incorporates several of those aspects, such as the applying knowledge and skills to real-world situations, working cooperatively with others, contributing to the well-being of the community, and developing awareness of national and world issues and events and their impact. So it's our hope at Piney Grove that the opportunities that are afforded each of our young Grizzlies during their G3 days throughout their tenure at Piney Grove will help serve them quite well and help inspire them in their path to success. And this evening, I wanted you to hear from one of our students, Will Bradley, who's been with us for 3 years now at Piney Grove, who's been able to participate in all 3 days. So Will, I'm going to ask you to come forward and share a little bit about G3 Day.
Hi, it's nice to see all of you. I've been a part of G3 for three of its first 4 years, and it's grown each year that I've been there. We've grown in students, we've grown in size, and so it's gotten bigger each time. This year, my homeroom, about 25 kids, went to There's Hope for the Hungry, which is a ministry of First Redeemer Church, and we packed 240 boxes of food between the 25 of us for distribution that weekend for the hungry in Atlanta. And it's 3 hours of your time on a Friday, and it's not that much time, but it's a lot of people coming together. It's 1,500 people, as she said, coming together for the good of the community, and that's what that really means to me. I did some research, and Forsyth County is the 25th richest county in the country. And sometimes we lose sight of what we really have and the opportunities that are afforded to us, just how fortunate we really are. And G3 for me has really put life in perspective. That I have it a lot better than most people, a lot better than the rest of the world, a lot better than the rest of the country. And it's our duty, it's my duty as somebody who is a fortunate person to help others who aren't so fortunate. And I want to share 2 quotes with you. Anybody who goes to Piney Grove knows Miss North loves quotes, and so I'll share 2 of them with you. The first one is from Muhammad Ali, and it says, "Service to others is the rent you pay for your room on earth." The other one is from Mahatma Gandhi. It says, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in service to others." So I wrote down 3 things. I've gained a lot more than 3 things, but these are the 3 main things that I've gained from G3 in my time at Piney. A sense of purpose in helping others. Feeling like I've been productive towards a common good and making a difference within Forsyth County and beyond. And I've developed an appreciation for the things that I have that many others don't. And it's really helped me put things in perspective. So I encourage anybody who's here to volunteer with G3 next year. I'll be in high school next year. Maybe I can come back and help again next year. I certainly hope I can. But it's a great day, and everybody comes together, and it's really just an awesome time to forward the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will. I'd also like for you to hear from one of our parents this evening, Ms. Kathleen Kramnik, and she's been with us since the beginning of G3 Day. She's been on our steering committee every day and has worked every year and has worked tirelessly to help bring G3 to life. So, Ms. Kramnik?
I'm not sure it's fair that I have to follow up, Will. And because I've been a parent at Piney Grove for 4 years, I also know Ms. North's love of quotes. And one of my favorites is, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And Margaret Mead didn't know about Piney Grove's G3, but she might have been describing it. When I got the call from Therese Batson, who was the inaugural chairperson for Grizzly Great Day of Giving, I said yes to being a member of the steering committee before she could even finish asking me the question. Terry North had this crazy, wonderful idea to take the entire student body, all of the staff, hundreds of parents, all out on one day, all at the same time to do community service work. And I thought, how can I not be a part of that? After 4 years, it's bigger and better. It's been a great experience. Every year we get heartwarming feedback from the organizations where we serve. Adolescents don't always have the best reputation, but we hear time after time from all of our contacts at the organizations where our students are working, how hardworking they are, how respectful they are, how courteous they are, and clearly serving others brings out the best in these kids. You've just heard what an impact G3 makes on our community, the numbers that quantify the work that's done on that day. They're astounding. But the real value of the Grizzly Great Day of Giving is beyond what we can measure. The enthusiasm and the excitement that our kids have as they take on the work on this day each year, it makes this mom pretty proud. Our children really recognize that they're making a difference in our community and that this difference doesn't have to stop on this one day. Many of them, as you've heard, take this day on. They've grown into a year-long service organization within the school. It's a great catalyst for them to really develop a heart to serve others. It takes many of them outside of their comfort zone, outside of their bubble, and it gives them a chance to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. As a parent, it's my hope that the spirit will continue in each and every one of them for the rest of their lives. And I really want to thank Ms. North, Dr. Evans, this board, and this entire community for allowing this crazy, wonderful idea to come to fruition and to happen every year at Piney Grove. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. And now we want to end with leaving you some pictures and about our G3 Day. Thank you.
never ceases to amaze me what you all can get accomplished in one day, and the lasting legacy is just beyond belief. Thank you for what you do. That's
Thanks so
great.
much.
And I know the answer to the word problem you read, with all the numbers, and it had to be a word problem. And the answer
Yes, it
was how to teach students that it's not about me and how to love others. And that's not even a standard that we have to teach.
Haven't found the Common Core yet.
I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, at this time, you're welcome to stay for the business portion of our meeting, but we will take a couple of minute recess. If you want to slip out, you can do that now.
That's my pens.
I almost forgot that. She went around in the meeting, everybody would have went, oh no, we don't sleep. That's mean.
It's hard, I tried this week, I got back into exercising, like, so Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I went out for my run. Yesterday, and I still get up 6 times to work, so. Dishwasher guy came up for the 3rd time today. I went to get water last night. It sounds like there's water pouring out the floor, and sure there's I'm sitting here trying to finish this newsletter, and so he just proceeds to take, I'm not kidding, 20 minutes to explain it, every little detail that was wrong with it, and I'm like, I started cleaning up the dishes, and I'm just like,
Maybe we should give
it's
it.
really not enough time for this. It's the 3rd time y'all been out. And then my husband keeps texting me, so was it this, was it that, was it this? And I'm like, it's long. I said, like, I keep saying it's a long story. I can tell you how if you balance the dishwasher this way, that there's a little bit too much suds, and then it bounces back and forth, and it goes over the grid, and I'm like,
Crazy.
yeah. You guys got a car for sale, I wonder if I could. Poor guy, he's in tough.
Jeff, yeah, no kidding.
Okay, are we down to the usual suspects now?
Think so.
All righty, I'll call the meeting back to order, and first on our agenda, we have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Tom and a second by Nancy. All in favor? Unanimous. And no public participation. Okay, presentation and discussion items. Joey Perkle, we have the local school council annual reports.
Good afternoon. I have the first group of local school council annual reports to the board. As you can see, the first group, this is the first group of elementary schools. It's Big Creek, Brookwood, Daves Creek, Johns Creek, Mashburn, Midway, Settlesbridge, Sharon, and Shallow Point. And I listed the local school council chairperson for each of those schools. Of course, all of our local school councils meet and have met the minimum of 4 times this year, with most of them meeting more than 4 times, but they're required to meet a minimum of 4. And I just listed some of the general topics that the local school councils discussed. You can see those. There's
no need really for me to go through all of those. You're very familiar with what local school councils do as you read those minutes, and actually, you attend a lot of those meetings. So you're very much involved in local school councils and what they do. So we do have some recommendations from some of these schools, and I will go over those. The first recommendation is from Big Creek, and it says, looking forward to facilities upgrades. It's not really a recommendation, it's really a statement. But looking forward to the facilities upgrades over the coming year to enhance tired or outdated areas of the building. Dave's Creek had 2 recommendations, have the same spring break as Fulton and Gwinnett County. This year they were different weeks, and it created a problem with the staff that has children attending those schools. Their second recommendation was to model the same type of calendar as Cherokee, with 6 weeks off in the summer, a fall break, Thanksgiving break, winter break, midwinter break, and spring break.
And do they have the same spring break as Fulton and Cherokee?
I would have to, I don't know. I don't know if those 2 things match. Midway's recommendation was to please keep Midway in mind when changing out trailers in the future. Many of the schools have gotten new trailers, and the shape of some of the trailers at Midway need to be addressed. Settles Bridge with 2 recommendations. The local school council understands challenges the district faces with increased population growth and adequately staffing its schools. The Settles Bridge community is concerned that there are several large neighborhoods under construction throughout the school year. While class sizes are manageable at the beginning of the year, they become quite large by the end of the year. The local school council would like to propose that there be some sort of formula to take into account expected growth when providing the staff allocations at the beginning of the school year. Their second recommendation was that Forsyth County is a nationally renowned district for its technology use. However, many of the desktops and laptops are outdated and slow. In addition, several schools have limited or sporadic Wi-Fi connectivity throughout the building. They're hoping that the bond referendum passes so that the technology resources can be updated to keep up at the forefront of technology integration. Sharon Elementary, their recommendation was they understand the current financial situation and budget challenges that the county is facing, but with that said, in future years, they would like to see the return of foreign language to the elementary level. And Shallow Point, they're asking to extend their front sidewalk for the purpose of increasing the number of cars that can be unloaded during morning arrival. And they were very specific in their recommendation. And that an extension of 54 feet would allow them to get all the students in the building and their classrooms on time.
They did their homework.
They did. And they explained what they currently unload 18 in 1.5 minutes, allowing time to move approximately 360 cars in 30 minutes. The additional sidewalk will enable them to unload 21 cars in 30 minutes, allowing them to move approximately 420 cars through the line.
Is this another word problem?
I got this wrong.
I don't know.
I
This
was at that
Johnson
meeting,
was
and
in the audience,
they
so
were
maybe
very
it is a word
excited about
problem. I'm
that.
not sure.
They said it really, I was at the meeting when we went over that, and it really has changed their morning routine. It really has, getting kids in on time, which is
Right.
what we need.
And their Shiloh Point's last recommendation, they'd like the board to consider the return of foreign language as well as a component to the elementary academic program. They believe that this action would support the Forsyth County Schools with a learner profile and better prepare students for secondary level experiences. So that concludes the report for this group of local school council annual reports to the board. As you are very much aware, these local school councils work hard. We appreciate their work. We appreciate the parents that are involved in functioning as an advisory board to the school, and the principals that work diligently to hold the meetings, but also really work hard to develop an agenda that's appropriate and an agenda that's relevant to the need to what they're doing and their school improvement plans and the academic progress of their schools and all of that. So we appreciate the work of everyone that makes up local school councils. And we are aware that that all of these recommendations will require a response from you, and we'll make sure that that happens, and I'll work with you to make sure that we coordinate all of that, as we always have in the past. And so that concludes our recommendations for this group.
Can I ask a question?
You certainly may.
Rebecca, on the foreign language piece, I know that the reasons that it was cut was because of funding, but it was also because it was felt that it wasn't as effective because of all the other things that you had to do in the school periods, that there wasn't enough time to make it an effective program after all the years. That was the evaluation piece. So how would you incorporate foreign language now?
I think we called it a component because it wouldn't necessarily look like it did in the past with it being part of a specials rotation, 40 minutes every 8 days. But a component and a point person that could lead the instruction, work with gen ed teachers to pull that thread through the curriculum that we're trying to integrate in the classroom. As we integrate those 5 content areas, how might we also introduce a foreign language and an understanding of different cultures so that we grow those global competencies with our elementary students? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it falls right in with the strategic plan.
Yeah, gotcha.
Great, thanks.
I like that many of the schools kind of reinforced all the work that our staff has done as far as facilities planning, and many of the things that they're echoing from the parent side and the business side as they're seeing the schools as things that are in our bond to address outdated things and technology. So a lot of the things will hopefully be addressed should the bond pass.
Right. That's right.
All righty.
I think I'm next.
I think you are next with the Inspire presentation.
We do have 2 Inspire presentations this afternoon. We have Corinne Melton-Cuffle, who is the assistant principal at Sony Elementary School, and she's going to be talking to you about a pilot math program that she has very successfully implemented at Sony called I Can Gloss, and she'll tell you all about that. And then Mr. Todd McClelland, who is the assistant principal at Piney Grove, and he's going to talk to you about some really interesting things that he's done this year with his Inspire project. So we're going to let Corinne come forward and go first.
Good evening.
Wow.
My Inspire project is building numeracy K-5, and it talks about the I Can Gloss math assessment, which is a running record you do 3 times a year. And my project came about as an assistant principal when I'm working with students trying to put interventions in place. It's very difficult in the mathematics area to target a specific weakness or a specific strength and tailor that intervention. So I found myself becoming frustrated, and the teachers as well, not being able to pinpoint exactly what we needed to put in place to make the student become more successful in the mathematics area. So our teachers piloted the I Can Gloss program, which we attended a training at the beginning of this school year during pre-planning, and we had 12 teachers who participated in this K-5, and we learned all about that in one day, and so they jumped in feet first, and the assessment is given 3 times a year. Basically what it's doing is it's assessing their complexity of the mental strategies that they're using to solve problems in daily life. So it starts with all of the, let's skip through here. It's mental math 3 times a year. It's individual. It's about 10 minutes per student, and the questions get difficult as you go through the process, and you come out with a stage, and I'm going to explain the stages to you. So from kindergarten to 5th grade, what it looks like when students are thinking and solving problems in their head. So the expectation for kindergarten at the end of the year is stage 3, and that means they can count from 1 without materials. The expectation for 3rd grade is stage 5 or 6, which means that if they're solving problems mentally, they're probably using strategies like doubling. If the problem was 8 plus 7, they might think, well, I know 7 plus 7 is 14, so I'm going to add 1. So these are problems that we were taught you just do the procedure. You know, if you're going to, that's how you figure the math problem out, you just do the procedure. But that really doesn't lead to algebraic thinking. So building their complex strategies to solve problems is going to open up doors for them in the mathematics area and as well throughout their life. The end of the year expectation for a 5th grader would be stages 6 and 7, and that's when they're doing things like if they had 27 times 6, and they have to solve this mentally, they're going to take the 20 times 6 and the 7 times 6, and then add those two together. So it's really just assessing how deep of knowledge they understand the numeracy. So we gave the test at the beginning of the year, K-5, and this is what we came up with our baseline data. The end of the year expectation for kindergarten, like I said, is stage 3, and we had 0% of kindergartners achieving, which makes complete sense. For third grade, or second grade, we had 0% of our second graders who were on track to meet that end of the year goal. And for fourth grade, we had 13% of our fourth graders on track to meet the end of the year goal. So we have this data and we're not quite sure what to do with it. And we had learned about something called Number Talks by Sherry Parrish during our training. And it's really all about talking out loud about how you're solving problems mentally so that they can build their repertoire for problem solving. So we hadn't gone through the formal training and we had just ordered the book. So we're meeting together as a pilot group and we are doing all the research we can, and we're talking about things that are happening in our classrooms that already support this, like problem of the day or calendar math, where you're asking students to solve something mentally, and then you are letting them talk about how they got their answer, and they're proving it, and they're talking about the discrepancies so we can correct misunderstandings, and then it helps the teachers guide their instruction. So a number talk is a daily routine of mental math. It's 5 to 10 minutes, and the students share their answers and their thinking. And this is an example of a kindergarten number talk.
All right, let's try that way. All right, let's try the other way. Now remember, at Zach's skill, they counted each finger. So let's try that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now we need how many more? 13, 14, 15. 13, 14, 15. We got 15 both ways, didn't we? Good job. Kiss your brain.
Yeah, so for the students who math is a natural gift, it's a great way for them to help their neighbor. And for those students who are struggling, it's a great way for them to listen and then to build their toolbox as well. So our pilot group said that they would dedicate 5 to 10 minutes every day of doing some type of number talk. And they focused on that until our winter data, which we did, our winter assessment, which we did after January. And what we found with our winter data, of course, the primary grades had the largest amount of growth, which you would expect. And our kindergarten went from 6% of achieving to 32% achieving for their end of the year stage 3. Second grade went from 0% to 52% achieving. And fourth grade went from 13 to 86% achieving. Here's our school comparison from our baseline, and we're moving the students up through the stages. And it was eye-opening for our teachers as well, because most of them were taught this is the procedure, this is how you do that. You don't necessarily talk about the number sense behind it, just that you can follow the procedure and get the correct answer. So it was uncomfortable for them as well. So it was a lot of learning for all of us together. In January, we came back from winter break. We went to the Sherry Parrish workshop, which is all about number talks, and there's a method behind how you give the problems, the mental math problems to the students, and how you're building their number sense. So things we have done since, I would say, October, we've done number talks, formal and informal. We've had collaborative workshops where we've brought our staff together, and we offer cafes after school where the teachers can lead professional learning with their peers. We've had peer observations amongst the pilot group, as well as people who are just interested, other teachers are interested, and they want to get involved. We've created some video clips for each other to share, and we've also we haven't been able to do this without Jessica Jatad and Dr. Lack being involved. So after we implemented number talks, after going to the training, this is a 5th grade clip, and there's a little 5th grade humor there, so I apologize for that. But just how much understanding of the true number sense that they have and how they're building on that, so they're able to do complex math problems. So this is a 5th grade.
2 minutes.
I subtracted 2 from 45.
Okay,
And added that to 38.
okay.
And that got me 40. No. Wait. Yes. 40.
Do 40 on this side,
And
good.
then I added the 43 because 45 minus 2 is 43.
Okay.
And I got 83.
Okay, good, that's a good strategy. So she made a friendly number here, 38 plus 2 is 40. Why did you subtract the 2?
Because if I would have subtracted the 2 from there, I could have added it to there and made 40, which is an easier number to add.
Okay, very good.
So she gave them a problem 45 plus 38, and they're asked not to add it procedurally in their head, and they're talking about their strategies that they come up with and how they would figure these types of problems out. And I really don't think you would get this type of deep understanding if you don't do the explicit everyday out loud talking about your logic and what works and what doesn't work, and having them prove their answers and entertain others' ideas as well. So looking ahead, a huge thing we found out is uncomfortable when you're teaching something that you're not comfortable with yourself. We weren't taught to do math that way, but that's really how you're going to get a deeper understanding, and you're going to create algebraic knowledge. And if students who are strong in algebra have been proven to be, successful in life, and they are able to go to college and do all sorts of things and just be successful, and we have to build that number sense. It can't just be anymore following the procedures of math and following the algorithms. We need to know the understanding behind it. So what we're going to do is continue to build the capacity for everyone at our school by bringing the pilot group out and letting them lead professional development. They've put some video clips online for each other. Getting our support staff involved. They attended the Number Talks session with us in January as well, so they're going to implement that next year. And then just figuring out how we're going to best implement this. Will we use this just with our at-risk students, or which groups of students will we use this with to make the best decisions for our students and what types of things we implement for them. That is it.
You showed a lot of data showing the improvement, but what's the kids' reaction been to it? What is their sense of it?
I feel like they're much more comfortable. They're willing to talk. The students who are shy about sharing their answers from the get-go are able to just come out and talk about it now, and they want to share with others.
That's the most, I guess I understand better about where we're heading in math now, listening to you, Corrine.
Mm-hmm.
Last fall, when the test scores came out with the coordinated algebra things, and the state board was just appalled at the numbers, and they asked, well, who did well? And someone said Forsyth County, and there's a board member, and I was sitting there just with like a deer in the headlights, but because I'm not a math person, but the only thing I could come up with staff development.
That's why she's an accountant.
Right, that's exactly right. It's an oxymoron in my family. But anyway, to listen to you walk through this, I know it in theory, but to do it like this and give those examples makes it so clear why we need to go this route when you've got everybody hollering to stop it. And that's not the right thing to do. And just listening to you just made it so clear. We need to send her down to the state board and make a presentation.
That's how I do math. So
Me
to
too.
me, that's how my brain thinks.
Put the answer and back into it,
Right.
Make it easier to add.
I do that, but we had to figure it out ourselves. I
Yeah.
mean, it was
Right.
yeah,
It wasn't
wasn't-
formalized.
Like, I don't think
allowed
as a,
to do that and talk about
I
it,
wouldn't have
and
said as a
maybe
fifth grader.
somebody that didn't do it thought, hey, I can do that.
that makes it easier.
It easier,
Right.
so it makes it easier for everybody.
Yeah, hopefully it'll show up in your test scores.
Oh,
and I think it gave our teachers some extra confidence as well.
Good.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good timing. Looks like I'd be a smart fifth grader now.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I have to throw my 2 cents in on her presentation that I think it was a great way for kids to learn from other kids too, as opposed to just learning from the teacher, because there's a room full of people who think different ways. So that's what I was thinking when I sat there, instead of just learning one way. So that's what I thought was pretty neat about that. my Inspire presentation, whenever I present to people, I always like to, I need to see who I'm talking to see what I need to talk about. So the Millionaire Next Door, it's one of my favorite books I've ever read, and has anybody in the room ever read The Millionaire Next Door or familiar with its concepts? Okay, it was written by a professor, I believe at Georgia State, and basically he interviewed millionaires to figure out how they became millionaires. And we're not talking about the lottery ticket, the lottery winners, the basketball players, the rap stars. We're talking about people who earn their money. And he figured if you want to learn how to be a millionaire, you should probably talk to millionaires and figure out what those people do to get their money. So I kind of took that application. I said, if we want to develop great teachers, well, we should study great teachers and we should look at great teachers. And I think many people would agree. Forsyth County and our classrooms are full of great teachers. Mm-hmm. And we had this thing that came out about a year ago. We were made aware of it, maybe a year and a half, called student growth percentiles. And again, how many people have a pretty good understanding of student growth percentiles? It gives a lot of information about what teachers are doing in classroom and how kids are performing. And it's a wealth, a treasure chest of information. In my 10 years as administrator, it's probably the richest source of data that I've come across, and tells you basically who's doing really well, and even tells you who's doing really well with certain kinds of kids. So that's what I based a lot of this on. To start this process, a couple of years ago, our teachers asked after a gaps analysis. They said, we would really like to do peer observations. And one of my concerns is, well, it's great that we have certain kinds of teachers who are going to go out and take advantage of that, and they're going to go find out who the best teachers are and, learn from them. Some people are not going to know who to go observe. And so I kind of see myself as a virus, okay? A good virus, though, where I spread information to other teachers. Okay, this teacher's really doing it well. This teacher's really doing it well. You should go see this teacher. So I started out, how can I get our teachers in front of other teachers? How can I get them in front of those millionaires, okay, to learn how to be millionaires? And I also thought about it this way, is that I'm sure you've all seen some of the price tags that the educational consultants, the experts charge when they come in, $3,000 to $5,000 a day, if not more, plus all travel-related expenses. And I thought that, maybe the guy next door or the person next door is maybe doing it better than those people because they're actually still in the classroom, or they're doing it every single day with Forsyth County kids. So that, to me, was some of the cheapest professional learning. It was from the millionaire teacher next door, okay? As next year with the TEAGS process coming full bore, where administrators should be in the classrooms a lot, but sometimes we get caught up in a lot of different things. But we did see, when you're out in classrooms, very specific instructional strategies that our teachers were using. And this was the first part of it, of giving direction to teachers of who to go observe in the classrooms. We initially started out with 3 observations a year, and as kind of you plan things, they sound good at the start, we pared that back to 2 observations. So specific instructional strategies. If you want to learn how to use writing in math, you should go see this teacher, okay, instead of just wandering in their hallways and seeing who you should observe. And then I use student growth percentiles to really look at the data and see what teachers are really, really doing a good job with our kids. And even more so, what teachers are doing a really good job with particular groups of students who have traditionally struggled. This is what, if you take a screenshot of student growth percentiles, this is what it looks like. And this happens to be science teachers at Piney Grove. I call this the bubble machine. They call this the visualization model, is what the state calls it. But if you look really where you want, ideally, you want as high as you can on the screen, and you want the bubbles as far to the right as you can. The higher you go, it's higher achievement, okay? But it doesn't take into account where a student basically started, okay? The farther to the right you go, that is basically the more growth that a teacher had with their kids or an individual student had. So this right here, these are science teachers at Piney Grove. And I highlighted the teacher in blue. That is actually one teacher right there. And that's how aggregated up how her students did as compared to all the other teachers. So this student, her teachers out, her students were above the 70th percentile in growth, okay? So basically what that means is that they had high growth. The average student in her class came through the doors, didn't matter if they were a struggling student or a strong student, they had high growth in her classroom. So right there, if you're going to go have a science teacher, go observe another science teacher, it would be this teacher right here that I would point them in that direction. You can even disaggregate this down. If you look at this area right here that I'm moving the cursor over, these are all the different ways that you can disaggregate this. Males, females, students with disabilities, students without disabilities, English language learners, economically disadvantaged, gifted, non-gifted. So this bubble that I've highlighted right here is students with disabilities. So the average student with disabilities in this teacher's class was above the 80th percentile for growth. And as you went through and looked at all the different, and it doesn't compare students, okay, with IEPs with other students with IEPs. It compares them against all students that are called academically similar peers. So as you sit there and you look at the student right, that teacher right there, that's her group of special education students. As I look through a lot of the other teachers, their results were more back in here. This is one of the struggling areas that we struggle with. A student who has a learning disability, as you can imagine, is not going to be one of your really far high and to the right. So you start looking at that and say, if you struggle with growth with special education students, then you really need to find out what this teacher is doing in their classroom, as opposed to just randomly going down the hall to observe somebody. I know that the board has heard some other Inspire presentations, and I heard you just mention the EOCT coordinate algebra. I happen to think that we have the greatest EOCT coordinate algebra teacher in all of Forsyth County, if not the state. If you look at growth at this teacher right here, you look at the average student in that class in about the 80th percentile for growth, and that's compared to students all over Georgia, okay, who took this test. So if you're going to encourage people to go observe a teacher, a math teacher, and I've talked to, I know Carl Mercer did one of his project around this. We've talked about this teacher a lot too. What are some things that this teacher's doing that in their classroom that makes it so that they had no problems at all with the coordinate algebra EOCT? And as an administrator, I've been in this teacher's classroom a lot and trying to be the virus and spread ideas to other teachers. And I was pretty aware of some of the things he was doing, but we had a lot of the teachers who did go observe him to find out. And we only have one teacher who teaches coordinate algebra at our school, but a lot of the other math teachers were taking his strategies and applying them to their own classrooms. This is the form that we use, and this is actually one of our teachers, Mr. Walker, who went to observe that teacher, Mr. Oswald. And really a lot of it was simply his questioning strategies. And it seems like a little thing, and this is one of the things I've learned about great teachers, is they really don't know a lot of times what they're doing that is great. It's just the way they do business, but it's very, very successful, and it's been successful with them. One of the things I notice as I walk around classroom to classroom, if kids don't know the answer, the teacher will right away give the answer. That wait time is what we call it. Mr. Oswald is superior in his wait time. You can hear the crickets chirp, but really what's happening is kids are thinking during that time. They're developing their answer in their head. And then if you look here at some of the things that he read, how he looked at specifically, I directed Mr. Walker to Mr. Oswald and said, basically, what are some things that you can walk away from? And this is a form that's actually created by one of our leadership teams. I told them this is one of my project this year. This is what they came up with as a teacher, what would be useful for them. So we were very open-ended questions, what they learned, what they loved, and what they will use in their classrooms. And this was a part of the teachers' PAC portfolio this year. So this is what one evaluation looked like, or one walkthrough observation. Okay, in addition to peer observations, this has been something that I started at Piney Grove several years ago, but the sharing, the virus, our faculty meetings, we try to use those as a platform for professional learning. Every administrator that I've ever known has said that I would have been a much better teacher because I've seen so many great teachers teach. And a lot of times you're like, wow, that was such a simple idea. I never thought about that. So just the sharing of ideas, and again, it's not that $3,000 a day person that charges you to come in. But what we do is our faculty meetings, we have people share their ideas, and a lot of them were ideas that we got from student growth percentiles or the instructional strategies. So we had people share on differentiated instruction. We had people share in writing and math. We had strategies for working with ESOL students. Again, these are all based on very high levels of student growth percentiles, and so they were sharing with the staff. Questioning strategies, and then strategies for working with special education students. The one teacher that I showed you, their little blue dot with special education students, this is a document she presented to our staff, and she's had, for years, she's had very, very high levels of success with students with IEPs. She also teaches gifted classes. She also teaches She teaches all levels of students, but these are just the little things that she does every day. It's nothing earth-shattering, but she does all of these things and makes it so that her kids with IEPs have huge levels of growth in her class as compared to other students who started at the same level. For example, one of my favorite things, if you look at number 4, hold students accountable. In her view, a lot of teachers don't hold students with IEPs as accountable as other students, and she says, if you're going to be in my class, you're going to learn what what I'm teaching you. And so she does a lot of things in her class that basically, just because the student has an IEP, it doesn't mean you get a free pass. So a very high level of expectations that she has. And finally, this is maybe my favorite part of this. This is a teacher, that same teacher I just showed you. Every one of these little dots there represents an individual student. And over here in the area that's blacked out, I blacked their names out, but you can click on the bubbles and you can get that student's name. And if you look around this area right here, this is 90th percentile and above, all these kids in this area. And so what we had teachers do is, we had teachers, once their student growth percentiles were released in about December, they went through all the students who were above the 90th percentile and all the students who were in the 10th percentile and below and reflected on, why did that kid have so much growth in my class, or why did they have so little growth? And I know that these kids over here, sometimes you just can't figure out why. The day the kid took the test, I would say maybe their hamster died and they were distraught. Maybe it wasn't a good fit. But if you look at the number of kids over here who are in the 90th percentile for growth, as far to the right as possible, and some of the kids as high as possible, that's what we're really looking for. To me, that's great teaching. Those kids really connected. So then I had the idea, well, why don't I ask those kids? Why don't I get with some of those kids and say, what is it that was so valuable that made you be in the 90th percentile and above for growth? So that was one other component of my project. And here's some actual quotes from some kids. My teacher always asked me questions and made me do my work even after school. And this is one of the special education students that she learned that he would never ask questions. So she specifically asked him questions every single time when there was an important component of instruction. And he went from a 775 on the CRC to an 833 in 1 year, and that was in the 90th percentile for growth. And that's one thing that, it's funny, I asked her about the student, I asked him, they both said the same thing, and independently of each other. This was a high-achieving student, and he said, I really enjoyed the subject, and my teacher had me do a lot of extra work that was related to it. I had to do a lot of extra research, and I didn't mind doing the extra work. And this student went from a 901 to a 980, and they were in the 96th percentile for growth as compared to all other students in the state. And finally, this student right here, the teacher made science a lot of fun, and it didn't seem like we were working. The teacher really got into science and gave a lot of examples. I am really interested in science now, and I'm glad to report that this young lady, she went from an 807, which is meeting standards, and she exceeded standards for the very first time in science since she's been in Forsyth County, and 94th percentile for growth. And last time when I actually had this young lady in my office talking to her about this, she was in our 8th grade physical science, an EOCT high school level course, and she had a 94% in that class, and one of the more challenging classes in our school. So those little things there that, and I've showed a lot of this with teachers about what it is that they're doing that's making the kids learn. Because a lot of times I go back to the great teachers, they don't know exactly what they're doing. That's just the way they do business.
I like that.
So in a nutshell, kind of some things that the administrative team did is we had, it said 3 peer observations, but we just changed that even this last week to just 2. We identified instructional strategies you would want other teachers to observe and to share with staff. We scoured the student growth percentiles and we identified those outliers, the people who were doing it really, really well, and even those people who were doing it really well with certain groups of kids. We spent a lot of time training teachers to understand student growth percentiles. What are they telling you? We had the teachers reflect on their student growth percentiles down to the kid level and down to a kid's name, which is a whole lot better than saying, well, 93%. Well, what is the kid's name? So what's the story behind that kid? We had teachers presented their findings, their strategies, their secrets for success at faculty meetings, and we interviewed students. Teachers, again, they had to do 2 observations. They had to reflect on observations, and they had to reflect on their student growth percentiles, and if they were nice enough, we don't require them, they were presented at faculty meetings. And in terms of where we're going next year, this is one of the things that our leadership team were talking about. A lot of the teachers that I talked to, I always talked to them about what professional meaning was the most meaningful for you, and a lot of them said that this was a really, really meaningful bit of professional learning. And I think as an administrator with the TEKS assessment system and us being in the classrooms a lot more next year, we'll be able to continue to be that virus and share, you need to go see this teacher, you need to go see this teacher, you need to go see this teacher. And some of the teachers have asked me that this was really designed with the observer in mind, professional growth for the observer. And we've had several teachers ask that they want feedback from their colleagues too, so it can be both an observee and an observer method for growth and professional learning next year. So that was my project in a nutshell, and it's just ongoing professional learning and trying to make our teachers even better than they already are. So thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
That just goes to show you that we're all lifelong learners, and the importance of that, and the egos don't get in the way. It's all about what they're so focused on what they're doing in the classroom. That is phenomenal.
Yes.
To see that.
Well, and like I said, it's a lot of the administrators, everyone will say, I would have been a better teacher just by watching
Right,
so
somebody
many
else.
teachers. So like I said, if you
Makes so
want
much
to,
sense.
you want to be a millionaire, talk to a millionaire
Right.
and see what
That's
millionaires are doing.
very powerful.
I like the way you went back to the students and asked from their perspective. That's really, they're our customers, so that really is
Yes.
valuable information.
Yes.
I'm curious, though, from after you had the student growth profiles, were there any preconceived notions on teachers that when you went through and compared and said, oh, somebody was maybe more stellar than you thought, that you didn't expect? Did data support what your gut feelings were?
You know, I think one of the things I learned about this is you should go back if you really go back, because we do have at least 3 years available. And because when the state released it, they released a couple years at one time last year, and then this year we got them about December. And so I was familiar with them before. You know, sometimes I learned, go back and really look for a pattern. Is it the same year after year after year? Because I understand, you know, we can all have a bad year. We can all, you know, maybe have a student teacher who maybe that really, because we do, when we have student teachers at Piney Grove, we try to pair them with our really good teachers. And in a sense, the really good teachers sometimes have a hard time, you know, but everyone, we owe it to the student teachers to try to, you know, get in. And it's not the same as being in front of that experienced teacher. But, so I did go back and look through patterns. I think that for the most part, what I thought to be true, the notions in my head were pretty true. But one thing that was really surprising to me when we broke it down by the subgroups, and you found some teachers who were like, wow, they're really good year after year with the SOL students. And then you start to go ask them, then you start to, okay, why is that? We have one teacher who is really strong with the SOL students, and our ESOL teachers asked, you know, hey, who should I go observe? And that was the question and so I went and started digging through everyone's, particularly looking for ESOL students. And I found year after year, she was really, very good. And then, so I went to go watch her. Why is she so good? She's very, very visual. She's a science teacher, very visual in what she does. And, you know, for example, you see precipitation, you know, the Savannah gets this, you know, gets 80 something inches of precipitation. And if you're an ESOL student, you might be saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't. Yeah. But she had all these visuals about what 80 inches of rain was and what 40 inches of rain was. And, well, in this part, it rains this much. And she had an actual 80 meter long, or 80 inches long paper strip. You know, so little things like that, where everything was very visual in kind of an abstract way. So if you had a good command of the English language, you understood it. If you didn't, you know, you basically, it was kind of vague until she put so many visuals with it. So
that's very interesting.
So it was really pretty interesting. So, okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Dr. Norton with policy GBI revisions.
As you can see with the new teacher evaluation, it's all in how you embrace the process and use it to improve instruction. And we have, and somebody left their watch. Joey's. Okay. In light of that, our board policy needs to be changed to make sure that we are reflecting the use of TEKS and LEAKS, as well as PAC and LAC. In the revision, we've put forward to you basically details that starting July 1, teachers of record and will be under the TEKS process. All other educators other than the leaders will be under the PAC, and assistant principals and principals will be under the LEAKS process, and all other system leaders will be under the LAC. That's the gist of what the policy revision is that we're recommending that the board review and adopt.
It is recommended that the Forsyth County Board of Education approve revisions of policy GPI, professional personnel evaluation.
So moved.
Second.
I'm going to leave it on the,
No, we need discussion.
Oh, we're not
Any-
voting.
But do we have any discussion we want to ask Candy or anything, and then we
Oh,
just
this is
leave it, right?
discussion. Okay.
Yep.
leave it go.
I actually followed what she said.
No, no questions?
Thank you.
All righty, thank you. Okay, and next we have the finance report with Mr. Dan Jones.
I'm frozen up.
You know how to run a crowd off. Okay, we have for you tonight a financial report for the month ending April 2014. And we started the month with $68,404,000. Our revenues for the month were $15,758,000, leaving us $84 million available. And our expenses for the month were accounts payable $12.8 million, and payroll was just a little over $11 million. Total expenses were $23,898,000, leaving us a balance of $60,265,000. And that is almost $2 million less than the same time last year. We have the budget for you. We're right at 90% on revenues with 2 months left. And overall expenses are right at 83, a little over 83%, and that's right in line with where they should be. And you can look through each area. Ad valorem taxes, we're almost at 100%. That's great news. One area, and we'll reflect on this when we go over budget, we see intangibles were only about 67%, but real estate transfer tax were 25% over what we budgeted. So we did make those adjustments when we look at budget. You can see also interest income, we're only about 50%. Interest rates really haven't recovered, so not like we thought they might. So revenues, again, are right at 90%, and you can look at each individual area if you'd like to go through that and see where they are, but everybody's right in line. List of the checks that were written for the month. School reports, all schools reported this month, and you can see that elementary schools have a total of about $2.3 million in their accounts when they combined. Middle schools, just a little over $1 million, and high schools, $3.3 million, and it's a total of $6.7 million in all the accounts. Sales tax, we were up a little bit this month, $2,646,000. That's 9% more than last month, and 3.6% better than last year at the same time.
Good job, Dan.
Have some sales. This money is invested. We earned $2,046, and there's currently $22.2 million in sales tax. And just look at it visually, this is what it looks like. We got a little upswing. It went up a little last month and continued that this month, so I hope it continues. 07 bond money, we earned $754 in interest, and there's about $7.3 million left for that. And 05, $307 in interest, and there's $2.9 million there. And again, this money is obligated for Brandywine. Capital projects reflects what we had in the other accounts. And debt service, there's a total of $33.8 million, and we got a $15 million payment coming up here next month. So take a good bit of that. So that's the reports for the month. Any questions I can answer?
I don't
Okay.
think so. So next we have action items with the FY15 tentative budget approval, which is also Dan Jones.
Okay. You got your budget books. I told you we'd have the details for you this meeting. Got a PowerPoint here we'll go through and then get into some of the details, and we'll dig as far into the book as you want to go tonight. But the idea is, hopefully tonight we can get tentative approval for the FY15 budget, and that gives us time to advertise the budget and make any changes or corrections that we need to make before we come back at the meeting in June and ask for final approval. Again, I don't have the final digest, so that leaves some of this up in the air. And I don't have the official QBE allotment sheet. We've got what we think our totals will be, but we got an email today. The allotment sheets will not be out until next week. So everything seems to be running a little behind this year. But that being said, let's dig into this a little bit. Going the wrong way here. There we go. Okay, this is the overview. Gives you a summary of all the expenses and revenues that are backed up with all the information in the book. We are looking at local revenues of $136.5 million. That is a $7.5 million increase. The state revenues, we're looking at 164.7, almost 0.8 million. That's a $17 million increase. So revenues will be up 24, almost 25 million over last year. And we'll dig into that a little deeper to show you where that comes from here in just a minute. You can see the expenditure side, instruction is up about 17.3 million. And a large part of that is due to, we are giving the days back, the 3 days, and a step increase, and hiring additional staff for the expected student growth. And you can look at each area. Media services is down a little bit, and the reason for that is a lot of schools are staffing their media centers in a different manner and doing different things with the media centers. But you can see the overall increase is $20 million. And based on the revenue that we think we have right now, that leaves a deficit of $7.8 million that will come out of fund balance. Digging down a little deeper, you can see instruction is almost 74% of our budget, 73.4. The other areas, the other higher ones are maintenance and operations, transportation, and school administration. And again, this year, we're about almost 89% of our budget is salaries and benefits. And operations are just a little over 11%. And the change in expenditures is up almost 7%. That's the 20 million that we saw on the first page. This gives you a visual of the breakdown of the expenses. Biggest piece of the pie, of course, is instruction. That's what we would expect to see, and you can see the rest of it. Some of them barely can see it, but that's the breakdown, just looking at a visual on it. And this, breaking down the expenses into salaries and operations, again, like I said, we're almost 89% salaries and benefits, and the rest is just the operation side of it. General fund revenues. This is based on what we do know at this time, as I've said before. You can see that ad valorem tax is up about $7.5 million. Intangible tax, as I told you, we would make an adjustment on that. We're taking $500,000 out of that because we haven't met that yet. Real estate transfer tax, we're adding $500,000 there because we're already over what we budgeted. And interest income, we're reducing that by $50,000. But overall, revenues for local are up $7.5 million. QBE is up $17.5 million. other state sources. This is the grants that we do know of. We'll probably get some more during the year, and this figure may go up a little bit. And the federal indirect costs and the flood control we're budgeting the same thing as we had this year. So overall revenues are $301 million. And down below on this slide, you can see how we calculated the ad valorem tax increase. You can see the gross digest and then the exemptions. Like, the exemptions are one part that we don't know right now. We're using their best estimate at the time. So that's a figure that I'm pretty sure will change. I don't know if it'll go up or down, probably up. And then the commission that we pay for them to collect our taxes, $3.3 million.
We talk about that every year. Someday, getting that down a little bit.
When is it too much?
Do you know if the exemptions are increasing percentage-wise of the gross digest? I mean, is it?
Compared to last year?
Any idea?
They usually do increase.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have what they're going to be for sure this
Right,
year.
for sure.
I started out, when we first looked at this, just using last year's because the number they sent me was way low.
Okay.
And then I made an inquiry to the county about it, and they sent me an updated digest. So this is the latest one that we've got, and it's, again, not final. And then the QBE, we are budgeting $6 million in midterm. That's for the growth, and I think we did $5 million this past year. And so we're bumping that up some based on our projected growth. Just a comparison between local and state revenues, again, the state's a little bit higher. This changed a couple of years ago as the digest decreased, and we still haven't recovered that yet.
You didn't want to put a federal sliver in there?
Yeah.
Not worth
It didn't show up.
Yeah, it sure doesn't show up, yeah.
$6 million or thereabouts.
A lot of people don't understand that.
I know.
In this budget, we do have some new positions. This is a breakdown of the increase in salaries. You can see the school-based positions, there's 111 positions. That equates to about $8 million in expenses. Classified school-based positions are basically a wash. We got some reductions and some increases. And then the non-school-based positions, we're looking at adding a social worker, 7 bus drivers, and 2 mechanics. So that's a total of 10, $362,000. So the new positions add to this budget $8.3 million. And then the additional costs are the step increase. First time we've given that in several years, $3.1 million. We are adding the days back. That's $3.4 million. And then teacher retirement does increase this year. Health insurance, the employer cost does not. So the teacher retirement increase is $1.6 million. So the total increase in salaries and benefit is $16.6 million.
So they don't anticipate an increase in employees' portion of health insurance? Is that
Not this year.
Not for the first 6 months, but when open enrollment comes around, I've looked at that.
yeah.
Yes.
It's just like you almost wait to since it's not an election year next year, that the budget was going to be tight again.
Yes.
They won't have any more money for
Open
education.
enrollment will be October, and the rates will go into effect for employees starting January 1.
Mhm.
But the employer cost is going to stay the same. That's what they tell us right now.
Okay.
Throughout the year. Now that, as we know, is subject to change.
Right.
That pretty much covers the highlights of general fund. I've got some other areas that we'll talk about in just a minute. Debt service, this is the debt service fund where we pay bonds from, the ones we don't pay from sales tax. And we'll be making some serious payments out of that this next year. And capital projects, there's not a whole lot there. Again, this is mostly for the Brandywine Elementary School. School food services, she is projecting, we talked with Valerie a good bit this afternoon, her revenues are down, but her expenses are down, and she says her participation is down a good bit. In fact, overall, participation is less than 50% of the students actually buy lunches at the schools.
Well, we know where we can put that blame in Washington.
That's right.
Yes.
But even with that, she is projecting about $1 million increase in revenues over expenses.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
I don't know how they do it.
I don't either.
Impressive. Just think if we could make the food the way we wanted to.
And her meal prices, she's holding meal prices the same as they are this year.
That's amazing.
So that was a good point.
How do they do that? I know she gets vendors to keep their bids low, but it just amazes me how she does it every year. And Susan did it before her.
Yeah, Susan, well, there's some federal regulations they have to abide by.
Right.
Whereas the free and reduced cost of meals, the feds want that to be about the same as what students pay. So at some point, she will have to raise prices just to keep in compliance with that federal regulation. Because the feds, of course, their commodities and all that stuff, they say it goes up. And she told me today she's about 30 cents behind now, so at some point she'll be forced to raise bill prices.
I think we need to pass a resolution about how awful the foods that we have to serve our kids are.
Well, I think I ran the numbers a while back, and I think it was about $6 million that we get from the federal government, so if we could, it's a matter of budget. If we ever had the nerve to say, we're going to skip that six, I'm serious, it's a matter of budget. We have to decide, is it worth making that statement? And it would, if we could make the food the way that may be more appealing, we might sell more and recoup the cost. We might be able to make up that $6 million and have kids eating more. I mean, not that they're doing the best they can with the rules they have, absolutely, but, you know.
But when you're not eating because it tastes so bad.
So she told me this afternoon that beginning the school year, that she got phone calls from parents saying that the biscuits you're serving for breakfast are burned. The kids come home saying they're burned. And she checked on it, and she said, they're not burned. They're whole wheat, so they're brown looking. So the kids don't really care.
They're not used to that.
Well, they leave I mean, my kid gets on the bus at 7:03. And they're just not ready to eat a lot at home or even drink a lot. They need sugar and they need fat, in my personal opinion. You know, they need to eat. So, healthy forms, of course.
Okay, that's the PowerPoint. And if you will, let's move to the book, and I won't go through the whole thing unless you want me to. But I would like to point out some things. The first page, we went over the summary. It's a $7.8 million deficit at this time. And then the next page is a breakdown. You can see even further. If you'll flip to the tab that says revenues, if you'll go to the second page behind that, what I've got is several years of the digest. It looks like the ad that we run in the newspaper. And to the far right, you'll see the 2014 preliminary numbers, the same thing that we just went over. But it's a 6.1% increase in the digest. And if you'll look at the net M&O digest for 14, it's $8.2 million. And if you'll scroll back across the page, you'll see that we're lower than we were back in 2008. Our net digest was a little over $9 billion. And this one is $8.2 billion. So we're still down, even though we have started to recover some, we're still not where we were several years ago.
And think of how many students we have grown over that time.
Right. Since 2008, how many students? We've added a bunch. So that's just some of the things. The next page will show you what we do know about QBE right now. One thing I want to point out is the austerity reduction. If you look under the projected FY15 allotment, you can see that it is $16,745,000, which we are almost $6 million to the good. So we've recovered part of what they owe us just for this 1 year. If we could get what they owed us from the previous years, we'd be doing pretty good.
Which is, how much is that?
Do you know?
I'm sorry.
How much is that?
What is it? I want to say 126 million or something like that, that we've earned that we have not received.
That would be great.
And at the top, you can see that for FY15, our FTE growth is 1,856 students. And we did get a little bit of money for nurses, an additional $36,000.
So is the QB, just to refresh my memory, because we have all different numbers, for the projected QB allotment, is that the 4-month average they're projecting ahead to, or is that, I mean, right now I know it's not exactly, FTE is not exactly enrollment, but we're at 40,914, I think.
Yeah, we're almost 41,000 students right now, enrollment-wise. But they use, what is it? It's the last 2 FTE counts plus, yeah, I think that's it, the average of those. And then behind that, you can see the breakout. This gives you a little more. This is all we've got to work with right now. You're used to seeing the regular allotment sheet, but this is the
there we go.
summary that they have sent us. If you can read it, it's kind of small.
Got it.
And let's see. I don't think you got this sheet because we just put this together, but some of the changes in the operation side of, we talked about salaries and benefits and why they were up like they are. We are adding a new computer lease to update some of our computers. That's about $2 million. The materials, furniture, and
We don't have this.
no, you don't have this page. We gave you this last week, and I've just added one or two things. But the furniture for the modular classrooms and expected replacement because of growth is $243,000. We're increasing textbooks by $286,000. So the total in the instructional area in the operations is $2.8 million. We're also having to bump the budget up for SLO printing, $50,000, and subs for, and I don't know what all this stands for, PBA, SLO, and CTAE. So that's $257,000. And then we are, again, increasing our rental for the modular classrooms. Don't want to call them portable. $465,000. So the total changes are about $3.5 million on the operations side with just those items. So those are the highlights of the things in the operations that have changed.
So will you give us this updated sheet sometime?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We were putting this together
Okay.
just before the meeting, so I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Now, one thing that we, is not included in this budget is any kind of across-the-board increase for salaries for employees. We did add the days, and we did add steps, and we can talk about increase otherwise if you want to.
Well, I wanted to bring that up. What if we did a 1 or 2, how much would that add to the budget, Dan, if we did a 1% or 2%?
That's funny you ask.
Just happen to have.
Because I understand the importance of step increases, but also that doesn't affect everybody at all.
Okay, a 2% across the board cost of living increase for all employees would cost us, with teacher retirement and Social Security, will cost us $4,729,000.
Okay.
Say that again, 4 million?
$4,729,000. You might as well say 730,000.
Okay.
A 1%, basically half of that, $2,365,000.
What do we have in reserves right now? Because that's what we'd be dipping into, correct?
Right. At the end of 13, audited was about $47.5 million. And we budgeted for this year to take out about $8 million in fund balance. So we'll be down to about $40 million.
I think we could do that.
Is that going to roll us okay into the fall?
Yeah.
With our October salaries and all that? Will we be cutting it close, or we'll still
we'll
make
be
it?
cutting it close, but we should be okay.
Yeah, to do that.
Right.
I remember a couple of years ago, we had to dip into balance as opposed to raising the taxes. And at that time, we needed to keep our percent. We needed to have the reserves to pay for the fall payments. But at that time, it was the right thing to do to bring it down to where it needed to be.
Right.
Are we kind of in that situation, is what you're saying?
Well, we're in the situation at the end of this year, we'll be down to where, because the law says you should have around 15%. So we'll be down to about that.
With the 8 million?
When we take this money out, yes. At the
When
end
we
of
take,
this year.
when we take it out with not including any percent, or we'll be down, when will we be at that level? With or without the increase?
Without the increase.
Without the increase.
Yep.
Is it something I would hate to, add, once we get the final digest and all, we'll have better numbers
That's
and the
true.
QBA, everything, we can always change it at our final approval,
Sure.
right? We can advertise like this, but then we can always
Right.
add things
Right.
in afterwards. That might
Oh,
be
sure,
the-
you can do that, that's fine.
Oh, that might,
that
when
might
do
be
you,
the
when's your,
safer way to do it.
I think we talked about this last week, but your gut, when we're gonna get the real final digest?
We'll be, hopefully we'll have it by the time the June board meeting. I'm not sure though.
Might have to have a call, but if we could have some more information, like those numbers
Yeah.
and, maybe even a 1.5, again, maybe just a couple more, and then what our options are, and then more about the fund balance, a little bit more detail to get it in my head anyway, just how it all works and.
And that 15% the law states is of what?
Of the.
Of your expenditures,
I
I
think
would
it's-
assume?
It's operating.
Your total expenditures?
Okay.
So the
So we're looking-
9
So we're looking
million is.
at $300 million in expenses, so.
Right.
You want
Yeah.
45.
Well, they say you're not supposed to have more than 15.
Okay.
But there's a range of acceptable.
Mhm.
Right.
But just even coming up with a number that we're comfortable with, say, can we get on to
Okay.
37 or 34, whatever that number is to
And
still be.
for me, it would be then, with that in place, how we'll be looking in September and October. I
Right.
mean, that.
Of the next
that's-
year.
Yeah,
that-
right.
But people, it's 40 million sounds like a lot in your budget and your reserves, but we know that we use that as operation money to hold it till we get our tax money coming in, so.
Yeah, we'll do a cash flow.
It's not just sitting there,
Right.
that's actually money we
Right.
use.
What is the lowest it's ever been?
Well, when I first got here, it was.
Maybe not that.
We've not been less than 30.
No.
No.
Yeah, not in my
I think the key point is we don't want to go so low that we can't afford to pay our bills and have to
Right.
borrow money, which costs us
Right.
money.
Right.
So
And
that's our,
you already know this, but when you add salaries and benefits, it's not 1 year.
Mhm.
It's there next year.
Ongoing.
Right, exactly.
So-
And that's what we need to understand,
Right.
is the ripple effect. What can we really afford?
Okay, we'll get you some
If
different
we could
numbers
have
on
that, I
that.
think that would be helpful.
And it looks like the level in the reserves we're shooting for is like 46.4 million, something like that. So you can see where we're at.
I think Nancy's got a good idea. So I think some more information, but I do think if they're a year to consider doing the raise, I think this would be the year to look at it for a
Right.
variety of reasons. One, the state has given us more money, and while they were kind enough to give us local control to decide whether it was additional days or salary increases or all of the above, we appreciate that. But a thing to consider is we have to make sure that our salaries stay competitive.
Right.
Because one of our goals is always to hire and maintain and attract and keep our teachers. And we're going out hiring 800 teachers this year, and we're competing with that.
Oh, yeah.
We want to get, so we have to, if everybody else raises their salaries and we don't, that's not going to help us, so.
And to that, we might look at our turnover metric and understand, is
Yeah.
it getting to a point we're starting to see a change in it?
Yeah, so I think we have to look at,
Yeah,
be
doesn't
interesting to
seem to
see,
be.
be nice to know what the other counties are doing around us, too.
We'll probably hear, they usually decide
So
before
there's
us.
a lot of chatter.
Yeah, Gwinnett just voted for a 2% raise. So,
Did they do,
Plus
did they do
step
steps?
and,
And
Atlanta gave
that.
2-step, APS gave 2-step.
2 steps.
mhm.
And, I mean, it's
Plus
from what,
the
And $1,000 bonus for every
are
teacher.
you making this up?
No, I'm serious. I'm serious.
They said they
I
also spend about $15,000
have
per
a friend that
student.
teaches in the Atlanta Public Schools, and she said they were all getting $1,000 bonus and a 2-step increase.
I'm biting my tongue on that one, as far as the rate of
Their millage
return on
rate is-
investment there, cost per student, just saying.
Well, that's the highlights that I was going to point out. We'll be glad to go through or let you take some time in your leisure and look through each area. And then if you have questions, you can get back to us.
That'd be
If
good.
you'd rather do it that way, that'd be fine. And then we'll get you this other information so that you can
That'd be great.
make some decisions.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay?
we need to address
We get tentative approval.
We would make a recommendation that the Forsyth County Board of Education give tentative approval to the FY 2015 budget as presented, with the recognition that those numbers may change as reflected in budget and our state allotment sheet digest, as well as final tweaking in terms of the expenditures.
So moved.
I was gonna say it, I was
Yeah.
laughing. Okay, a motion by Nancy and a second by
And
Ann. All in favor? Unanimous?
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the GSBA Assembly Delegate Alternate Appointments.
Who's going to be down there? Yeah.
No, well,
I'm thinking-
Darla and I are going to go, I'm going to do the GSBA, but not the NSBA.
NSBA.
No.
I
Okay.
think I may go late to the GSBA and do the
Do
NSBA.
NSBA.
Are you gonna do the NSBA?
I haven't quite decided yet. I'm going to decide tonight.
I'm going to go to Friday and Monday.
Okay, well, I guess then we should let you and Kristen be the delegate and alternate,
To be sure.
All right.
because we know that y'all will be there during the,
I was assuming Friday and Saturday is the Thursday, you know, we do the policy stuff, is that, I've never
That's the
gone to the summer
training.
version, is that,
Same.
repeat what we're going to get in
Mhm.
so, good, it's not worth going the
No.
extra. Okay, I'm good with the Friday, Saturday then, that's when the delegate stuff is on the Friday.
It's a Friday at about 1 o'clock.
Okay, I'll be there for that.
okay. Do we need to vote on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do I have a motion that we make Ann the delegate and Kristen the alternate?
So
for
moved.
GSBA. Motion by Tom,
Second.
second by Nancy, all in favor? Unanimous? Okay, and Dr. Evans, you have points of information?
Basically, points of information that I would just point out to you are the information that's in there, pretty well normal things, nothing really out of the ordinary. One thing I do point out is also a budget item is you have, we continue to participate with the Cooperative Extension Service and Programming, and that budget item was in your budget recommendation as well, but they do have a service activity report for you. So if you have any questions about any of those, let me know.
All righty. Next, we have an executive session. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
For what?
Oh, for personnel.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Ann and a second by Nancy. All in favor? Unanimous?